True life is on the beat.
Database. What's going on, everybody? Sorry for the hold up. I meant to stream a little earlier, but I got knocked off the internet. Yeah, I got knocked off the internet. Hold on. But we're good now. Let me just get everything together for you. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. I appreciate you. So it was the last video that we did. Here, let me get this off the screen so you guys can see. One moment. There we go. Let's get this out of here. It was the last video. We talked about that new Rolling Stone article by Vicky Ward with allegations. It was about Jeffrey Epstein. It was about how his abuse, they would record the girls that, got ensnared by Jeffrey Epstein's trafficking ring. They would film it, record it, and some of those videos ended up on websites like Pornhub.com. Pornhub, you might recall, is under fire right now. They say they're being targeted by anti-porn organizations, but it's actually much larger than that because this is a MindGeek lawsuit that hosted child porn, rape material, just abhorrent type of content across its website, and not only enabled it and allowed it to persist, despite having the tools to remove it quite easily. They just let it go, and they're claiming they didn't do it otherwise. So it's interesting to see that overlap between Epstein and Pornhub, but what's even more interesting is the fact that credible allegations have come out to suggest that Jeffrey Epstein may have been a weapons trafficker. And he's taken visits, possibly, right? This is from 4 different sources, according to Vicky Ward's article on Rolling Stone. As a matter of fact, let me pull that up so you guys can take a look at that as well. The show notes are in the chat on DLive, so you can go ahead and click those if you want to follow along. So this Rolling Stone article was, July 15th? And yes, Vicky Ward. Was Jeffrey Epstein a spy? The notorious financier pedophile told exaggerated stories of his time in intelligence circles, but some of those stories may have been at least partially true, right? It's always tacked on at the end, and that one little but is humongous when it comes to people like Jeffrey Epstein, because we aren't talking about just powerful politicians that Jeffrey Epstein was hanging with. He kind of hangs out with the people that transcend politics and instead actually kind of guide and influence politics. So with this new information talking about Epstein not only being a former weapons trafficker, possibly, taking visits to the Pentagon as early as 1981, but the idea that he was working on sensitive national security issues as well, and it involved sexual blackmail, and it was apparently operations at a very high level, very dangerous level, according to these witnesses here in this article. So someone that worked with Epstein but ended up getting conned by him, it's Hoffenberg fella. Hoffenberg claimed that Lease, another person that apparently served as Jeffrey Epstein's mentor all those years ago, well, Lease was a arms dealer, arms trafficker, weapons trafficker. And we know the type of operations that those tend to fund, whether it's CIA's involvement in Iran-Contra, right? They're trafficking drugs, they're trafficking weapons to prop up these, little regimes, these armies that are overthrowing some other government, especially in South America. So this got me thinking, this should be really discussed a lot more, because this entirely shifts someone's perception, on Jeffrey Epstein, as if it wasn't bad enough already, by the way, as if it wasn't bad enough already. So while the internet was down, I just cobbled together this little intro that kind of gives you an idea of how that shift in perception of Epstein can be very valuable in understanding how much effect he had on the world around us. And not only just him, but people like Jean-Luc Burnell, people like Ghislaine Maxwell, and these fucking pizza freak weirdos that repeatedly seem to be in the presence of intelligence agency, glow-in-the-dark fucking weirdos that are behind the scenes in a lot of the world's most major and devastating incidents. So I'm going to roll that, get the rest of my notes together, and once again, those notes are in the show notes, and I'll see you on the other side of this thing. When the mainstream public thinks about Jeffrey Epstein, they probably think about the sex trafficking of underage girls to his private island. That's where they stop. What I'm trying to say is this is all by design, because we're only allowed to know so much about Jeffrey Epstein. What they omit and what they don't cover enough is the fact that he was engaged in blackmail. Jeffrey Epstein was recording both video and audio in many cases of the alleged abuse that has taken place. Almost every room in every mansion Epstein owns is wired for audio or video, so anything a guest does or says in the presence of Epstein is being recorded. If you couple this with the fact that his social circle doesn't so much contain politicians so much as it does those that influence those politicians, the bankers, the hedge fund managers, the money men, and, scarily enough, the intelligence agency types. In a new Rolling Stone article published by Vicky Ward not long ago, it alleges that Jeffrey Epstein was not only a sex trafficker of underage girls to powerful men, but also engaged in weapons trafficking as far back as the 1980s, and was apparently successful or useful enough for obtaining a role that required him to fly for a private visit to the Pentagon. In the same article, it alleges that Jeffrey Epstein worked on national security issues, and it involved sexual blackmail, and was played at a very high and dangerous level. See, it's those details they don't want you to know, because that's when you realize just how much influence someone like Epstein and his gang has. He's rubbing shoulders not so much with obscure creeps with sexual deviancies, but rather the people who have the power to deal with this type of stuff.
What we're looking at is basically one of the 5 Iron Dome missile batteries. Its goal is to, as much as possible, intercept rockets which have been launched towards the cities of Israel, to intercept them in the middle of the way, in the air, in order to protect the people.
Bomb Iran, you know, bomb. Anyway.
Give them the weapons they need. Give them the weapons they need.
The situation in Nicaragua will not improve economically for the people if we cut off aid to the Contras. In fact, it'll probably worsen. The only way that the economic conditions of the people in Nicaragua will improve is if the kind of government that's representative of the people is installed.
As we have in the past, we can help facilitate weapons to get to the hands of the Libyan military, those who are fighting against Gaddafi. I could show the president targets on the map today that he could be bombing and killing ISIS people, the same ones that carried out this hideous decision.
It's important to remember that what the mainstream media tells you about Jeffrey Epstein is not entirely true. The media wants you to focus on the fact that Jeffrey Epstein was a sex trafficker of underage children, and that's all he was. In reality, he was a lot more than that. In fact, he's connected to intelligence agencies around the world, and is connected to some of the most powerful people alive today. There's credible allegations to suggest that Jeffrey Epstein used to be an arms trafficker in the 1980s, and even visited the Pentagon for national security-related missions related to sexual blackmail. Okay. Right, so just like a quick little intro that I cobbled together while the internet was down, I was waiting to stream. The idea of Jeffrey Epstein, only as if the trafficking stuff isn't bad enough, right? He's raping hundreds to thousands of underage kids, but that's all he's doing. He would never punch them, he'd never choke them out, torment them, torture, I don't know. None of his friends would certainly drift, cross that line a little bit because he treats them as commodities anyway, 14-year-old girls or younger. None of that would ever happen because Jeffrey Epstein only stops at raping 14-year-old girls, but that's it. No violence, strictly against the rules. These people don't have that type of situation, right? They don't have a moral compass. They live somewhere where that compass just has no bearing over reality, like it does for all of our realities, really. Oops, I hope I muted that all the way. Sorry if I didn't. Point is that now that we have this information, which by the way are just allegations, but Vicky Ward has been a reporter on Epstein for quite a while. It's in Rolling Stone. Even critics would say, it's an authoritative source. It must be true. Well, in this article, it's saying multiple sources are saying he was involved with defense contractors. He was selling weapons, right? He was paired up with a very prolific weapons trafficker, which is that guy, was it Douglas Lease? Lease was his last name. Excuse me. And if you're involved with those types of people, that then gets into an entirely different situation because if you recall, Jeffrey Epstein was quite close with Ehud Barak, the former prime minister of Israel. So he's chilling with former presidents, sitting presidents, probably in some cases, former prime ministers like Ehud Barak. And, being the former prime minister of Ehud Barak would ultimately lead you into the situation from the scene I think comes after this, the Iron Dome stuff, the idea of building a nation's weapon systems, trafficking weapons to them, whatever. And I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on the nuances of all that. And even the best read person on those types of scandals, which by the way, there are many, and we're going to check those out in a second, which is the entire point. I want to put in perspective just how dangerous the people around Jeffrey Epstein are outside of sex trafficking anyway, right? The Iron Dome, all these, he's brushing shoulders with people that have to handle this type of shit. I mean, where do they get the weapons, right? Where do they get the funding? Well, they do. Let's get to the nonsense here. I can go on about the fucking drug trafficking, the weapons, and all that shit. So let me actually show you what I'm talking about. First, we're just going to lay the groundwork. So if we're to assume that Jeffrey Epstein is hanging out with these spooks, these shady intelligence agency types, then it's fair to assume that it's people that kind of have a role to play in things like Iran-Contra, drug trafficking, into inner city neighborhoods, right? Freeway Ricky Ross, Whitey Bulger, shit like that. And government overthrows, coups, right? Overthrow, regime changes. That's basically where all this leads to. Oops, excuse me. So we'll just start off with real basic overview here, because again, I can go a lot deeper into all of this, but I just kind of want this to be a entry point for people that might not be aware of these different instances. So you could just type in allegations of CIA drug trafficking, something that right off the bat you'd never believe is real if you don't really look into this stuff above a casual level. The United States Central Intelligence Agency has been accused of involvement in drug trafficking. Now if you go down to, I think there's some other stuff here. Nicaragua. In 1986, U.S. Senate Committee on Foreign Relations began investigating drug trafficking from Central and South America and the Caribbean to the United States. The investigation was conducted by the Subcommittee on Terrorism, Narcotics, International Operations, chaired by Senator John Kerry. Yeah, it's better. So its final 1989 report was known as the Kerry Committee Report. The report concluded that it is clear that individuals who provided support for the Contras were involved in drug trafficking. The supply network of the Contras was used by drug trafficking organizations, and elements of the Contras themselves knowingly received financial material assistance from drug traffickers. And my point is that the funding source oftentimes comes from entities like the CIA, which is well documented. You can ask Gary Webb's family about that and what their thoughts are on it. And if you don't know who that is, just go ahead and do a quick Google, right? Let's do this. You could do United States involvement in regime change. So this describes basically the participation or interference, both overt and covert, in the replacement of foreign governments. And the CIA, once again, they tend to fund these groups of people that, let me switch over to this. They fund these groups of people that conduct the regime change, all right? Now, that is the type of people we have to understand that Jeffrey Epstein is hanging out with or has hung out with if these allegations from this Rolling Stone article turn out to be true. But it follows right in line with what we've basically assumed about him for, some time now, over 5 years. He was involved in far more. It's like if you already have the channel set up to sell human beings and traffic them without any real hindrance or threat of, resistance, why not do guns? Why not do anything else? I mean, I know humans are probably the most valuable commodity, but it's all about influence peddling, which we know Jeffrey Epstein was mostly about, aka the blackmail. So the media right now is lending the impression that, this blackmail stuff was really just conducted because Epstein, it was his own little independent operation. He scrambled his way to the top by simply cheating. He would record powerful, influential people, like the friends he hung with, whether it's Prince Andrew, Bill Clinton, Ehud Barak, anyone that stepped foot on his properties were recorded both on video and audio for the most part. There's been plenty of testimony about that from his victims. It's because it was a blackmail operation, and the mistake people make, if they even make it to that point anyway, because the media barely touched on that. Even at the peak of Epstein coverage, blackmail was never really discussed as thoroughly as it should have been. And the reason for this is because we would come to realize as a group, as a whole, that really it's Ghislaine Maxwell and that family lineage that also leads us into the shady world of espionage, sabotage, regime change, drug trafficking, state-sponsored drug trafficking, and state-sponsored human trafficking, right? So let's shift the attention to Jeffrey Epstein and then minimize the blackmail stuff, and that way we'll ensure that the public never really goes as deep as they can and understand just how much influence this dude has and how much of the world's events, like Iron Dome shit, I mean, that was just buzzing, a couple months ago. We were flooded with Iron Dome missile clips because that, conflict where they're just lobbing missiles back and forth at each other. Couple-week news cycle there. I mean, he's chilling with the people that coordinate that type of stuff, that deal with national security issues. I mean, he's hanging out at the Pentagon by 1981, and where does the public's interest of Epstein come into play? For those casually interested, maybe past 2007, which was Jeffrey Epstein's first arrest. But for most people in the world, no one gave a shit about Epstein until they heard that he was chilling with Donald Trump in 2016. You know what I mean? No, even after that. You get what I'm saying? This guy was already hanging out with the most powerful people and going to the Pentagon, working on national security shit since 1981. So where's that gap of time? Why do we see only the Jeffrey Epstein from the 90s to the present, and not whatever made him into the man we know him to be, right? We saw the article, the news clip that said Epstein threatened to feed one of his underage sex slaves to alligators if she ever told anyone what they did to her. That's the Epstein I know is really under here. That's the situation I fucking know. These people rape hundreds or thousands of kids over the span of their lifetime, and you're going to tell me they never hurt them in other ways? All right. So the reason I wanted to really talk about this, a very long foundational understanding there, but now we're going to get to the actual show notes, is in our circles, a particular story has been buzzing. I mean, it's a big story even outside of our circles. But it's one of those stories that normies, the uninitiated, they won't really give a shit about this. So this is why I wanted to draw a parallel to the types of people Epstein probably was hanging with, brushing shoulders with, and how that affects our lives today.
News: the president of Haiti murdered in his sleep. In the days that followed, it's been a dizzying array of headlines, twists, and turns. The biggest, perhaps, that Americans may have played a role, including a doctor. Our Marcus Moore has spent the last several days on the ground there and files this in-depth report on where things stand with the investigation into the assassination.
Video of armed men outside the Haitian President Jovenel Moïse's personal residence surfacing around the early morning hours of his assassination last Wednesday. What happened next has rocked one of the world's poorest nations to its core. The gunmen presented themselves as DEA agents, but they were not. Inside the residence, a barrage of gunfire. President Moïse shot 12 times, his wife injured, airlifted to a Miami hospital. She recounted the incident in a recent audio message. Quote, "I am alive, thank God, but I have lost my husband, Jovenel. Mercenaries entered our house and riddled my husband with bullets." In the hours after the shooting, shell casings and bullet holes permeated the residence, the country in a state of siege. Haitian forces deployed, confronting and arresting some of those accused of taking part in the assault.
And this is where the gun battle happened. You can see the massive bullet hole left in the wall here, and there are a lot of them on the building. Shattered glass and also spent shell casings. And look at what is left of this building, this burned out building.
More than a dozen Colombians and 2 Haitian Americans are under arrest in Haiti. But 1 week later, the hunt for at least 5 others suspected of being involved in the assassination continues. Who organized it and why remains a mystery.
Hasta el momento.
In a press conference Monday, Colombia's national police chief saying that a Miami-based security company bought 19 tickets from Bogota to the Dominican Republic for a group of retired Colombian soldiers who have now been arrested in Haiti. Authorities also pointing the finger at this man, Haitian Dr. Christian Sanon, who lives in Miami. Sanon has long been a critic of the Haitian government, recording this video in 2011.
Where is the leadership of Haiti? Nowhere to be found. You know why? Because they're corrupt.
He is now behind bars in Port-au-Prince. We tried to see him at the jail.
We're here to see Sanon.
But we were told to turn off our camera and that visitors weren't allowed.
Christian Emmanuel Sanon.
Haiti's chief of police says Sanon wanted to take over the government, that he came to Haiti on a private plane in June, and that he had contracted with a security company to enlist the services of some of the 19 Colombian men now under arrest. The assassination has left Haiti in a power vacuum, stoking fears the country could descend further into chaos.
Is there a power struggle going on right now? Who is in charge here in Haiti?
I don't know if there is a power struggle. I'm not paying attention to whether or not there is a power struggle. I was an acting prime minister. I was a prime minister ad interim, I should say. So after the tragic death of President Jovenel Moïse, I had to take charge, and I did.
Interim Prime Minister Claude Joseph was supposed to step down from his role. President Moïse had appointed another man to the role, Ariel Henry, just a day before his assassination. The interim prime minister now appealing for calm, but the situation so destabilizing, Haiti has asked the U.S. to send troops to help protect critical infrastructure and keep the peace. The White House says there are no such plans. Haiti is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. It never fully recovered from the devastating earthquake more than 10 years ago. And even before that, this nation...
And just real quick, just a reminder for anyone that might not be familiar, not like I'm some expert on Haiti's history or anything, but that earthquake they referenced is the main focus point of people like you and I investigating the pizza nonsense, because Laura Silsby is the one that abducted those kids during the earthquake, and that connects directly back to the whole the faces of Pizzagate, like James Alefantis. So the owner of Comet Ping Pong, on the board of directors for the very orphanage of the kids that Laura Silsby abducted in Haiti after the earthquake they just mentioned, well, it includes people that are also the lawyers for James Alefantis, the main person in Pizzagate, the guy that even went on TV to say, look, I don't fucking know why they're calling me a pedophile. I don't know. I don't have kids, but I put a lot of kids on my Instagram, so what? I don't have a basement, so what? Debunked, ha. So it's just interesting that once again, that theme pops up. I wanted to let everyone know about that. But once again, there's a lot of nuances here, and you could research your entire life to understand what's going on there, and you still won't get it. So I'm not going to pretend that I get it, but what I do understand is perhaps the reason we don't want to send troops over to help is probably because we are responsible, at least in part, for the assassination to begin with, because there's been recent buzz, number one. This is the reason it got interest among people in our circle, aside from the fact that, the leader of a country just got popped. But Haiti had recently declined the AstraZeneca needle from the World Health Organization's COVAX facility in May, citing widespread side effects reported in Europe. So they said no to a certain type of vaccine. They're like, get the fuck out of here. I got shot in my home while I'm sleeping type of shit. So many such cases. But whether it's because of the jab, whether it's not, it doesn't matter. My point is because the news came out, let me see if I can find it, that a former DEA informant linked the investigation. He turned in, let me pull this up. Check this. my point here is in the background of these situations, if you know how to look for the signs and the patterns, you'll see it. So at first we'll get a story like, just the assassination, and then this type of stuff trickles out by the time people kind of already stop giving a shit. Former DEA informant linked to the Moise investigation turned to agency after assassination. A suspect in last week's assassination of Haitian President Jovenel Moise, I am definitely mispronouncing that, I should have thought of that before the stream, was once a confidential source for the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA. The Miami Herald and the McClatchy Washington Bureau have learned that the suspect is Joseph Gerton Vincent, first arrested more than 20 years ago for filing false info on a U.S. passport application, and then who went on to become an occasional DEA informant, just the normal course of work. Vincent was identified by Haitian authorities over the weekend as an arrested suspect, along with another South Florida Haitian emigre named James Salagas, 35, who until April was a maintenance director in a Lantana senior living center. There's one more segment I want to give you. Once again, this is all in the show notes. Give me one moment to find that. Yeah, so the subject apparently reached out to the DEA following Moise's killing, alerting officials to his link and forcing the DEA to reveal one of its sources, which is an exceptional development. I guess, if you don't know anything about how these things work, it's really just a matter of a guessing game, like which agency is it going to be. Okay, so then what happens is, I think it's the following link. There's another article on this from the Daily Mail. There we go. Friend of mastermind behind assassination of Haiti president says America backed the killing, as it revealed the DEA informant and FBI informants are among suspected hitmen. So once again, the conspiracy theorists that say, oh, it's probably some coup, some fucking CIA-backed regime change bullshit they've been known to do, they'll probably call it as being just tinfoil hat bullshit. But here we have it coming out after the assassination. The distraction maybe being the whole vaccine thing. Maybe that is the reason, I don't know. But I imagine it's a lot larger than that, and that's just an added benefit in a way. I guess we'll see if the new power structure that's installed wants that vaccine really bad. But, these are always in the background. They'll call us crazy, but then the news comes out eventually that, once again, the main group of people making waves is some type of government organization, DEA, FBI, CIA, whatever it might be. So, interesting, right? I just wanted to touch on that. I'm not going to get too deep into that because I'm not an expert on it, but just an example of the involvement, possibly, of America backing this type of behavior. In recent times, you can go back and easily find other examples, but it's still going on today is my point. And these are the types of people that Epstein might have been hanging with or blackmailing, recording having sex with kids, or, recording the audio of conversations of people that stayed at his house that are talking about classified material or something. Hey, listen, I got you on record, got you on recording talking about X, Y, and Z, which is top secret. I'll release this shit to everybody, some foreign government, because I'm also tight with them. I blackmailed the fuck out of them. I'm tight with them. That if you don't give me money for it, then I'm going to hand it over to some enemy nation. Whatever it might be, that's the level that Epstein was at, is my point. So let's look at this. Defense continues attack in Whitmer kidnap case. Asks to move trial. You might remember this case. Well, excuse me. Let me open up this video here. I should have had this queued up. So just a brief update. Governor Whitmer was apparently going to be kidnapped by a rabid group of alt-right terrorists. This is very important. Those goddamn alt-righters, QAnoners.
Angry protesters at the Capitol confronting police and demanding to be let inside. But this isn't Washington, D.C. This is Lansing, Michigan, a year ago. A rally organized to protest COVID restrictions, with members of the state's militia groups openly taking part.
What happened here was less violent than what took place at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. There were some scuffles and one arrest, but according to law enforcement, a seed was planted. Among a small group of people, a plan was taking shape to do something much, much worse.
The alleged plan was to kidnap the governor and put her on trial for treason, all because of Michigan's COVID lockdown.
Wow, sounds pretty brutal. I mean, those guys are really brutal. Those right-wing extremist, Trump supporter, QAnon fanboys. Those are real extremists because they're trying to kidnap my governor. They must not believe in science and stuff because they want to kidnap my governor, and they're protesting against COVID and stuff, right? Real bad guys. Well, maybe that might be the case. Or a few weeks later, you might get something like this. Give me one moment. Like I said, I should have had this actually queued up. Yeah, I do have the link. Sorry, guys. I thought I had a different one. It's the same shit. My bad. So, a paid FBI informant entrapped a Michigan man accused of plotting to kidnap and harm Governor Gretchen Whitmer, according to a federal court filing on Monday, as defense lawyers leveled a broader attack on the foundation of a high-profile case involving alleged violent extremism. So once again, you can just simply stop at this thing, right? This video we just watched saying how terrible those alt-right extremists are trying to kidnap my governor.
With members of the state's militia groups openly taking part.
What happened here was less violent than a small group of people. A plan was taking shape to do something much, much worse.
The alleged plan was to kidnap the governor and put her on trial for treason.
Right, so that's just an individual group of radical right-wing extremists, except for the fact that later on, we always end up finding out that things like this, a paid FBI informant entrapped one of the people apparently accused of plotting to kidnap and harm Governor Gretchen Whitmer. So now you have to end up considering what's the nature of that entrapment? Were they coerced to do certain things? Were they baited into it? How much of this was on these people's own volition and how much of it wasn't? In a way, what the FBI has been accused of doing, especially in the age of terrorism, Middle Eastern terrorism, is kind of egging it along, really encouraging these people to build that bomb, right? To make those plans. All the while, they're watching them, knowing, they think they know, they can stop it before it happens. The bomb will never blow up and no one will ever die. We look to be the heroes, right? So let's let them get as close as possible. Then we could say we're the heroes that foiled this grand plot. But in doing that, they kind of end up generating terrorism rather than actually authentically stopping authentic, genuine terror cells and attack plans from happening. I mean, most of these people end up being radicalized in part by the informants that have infiltrated their group. I would be surprised in a way if it was the other way around. Everyone right now is under the impression that these are authentic groups that form and, that's just how it goes. The world is a violent place. When in reality, if you really dig deep, and we're going to continue to do so in this video, you're going to see that a lot of that is pushed along by fucking glow-in-the-darks, weirdos, pizza freaks, whatever it might be. Pizza freaks with a badge. It's usually them. So a lawyer for Canton Township resident Brendan Caserta wants access to the informant's phone to determine if the informant's role in encouraging the conspiracy and persuading others to commit federal crimes. The request came amid a flurry of motions that provided a view into defense strategy that involves suppressing evidence, attacking the work of FBI agents, and claiming FBI informants entrapped men in the conspiracy. So right now, that's the wording that might say that's an impossible thing, right? That can't possibly be the case. These are bad people, but the fact that there's informants at all is a red flag to me. 5 men are awaiting an October trial in federal court in Grand Rapids, though one defendant asked, blah, blah, blah. Let's move on. The informant filing in the Whitmer case was prompted by what Caserta's lawyer, Michael Hills, said appears to be an accidental disclosure of text messages among FBI agents and the informant, known as Dan. So Dan was the informant in this alleged Whitmer plot, chilling with the right-wing extremists, radicals. The informant is referred to in the court filings as CHS2. In one exchange, FBI Special Agent Henrique Impola encouraged the informant to invite Caserta to stake out Whitmer's vacation home in northern Michigan. So this is the FBI agent bringing that up. The authentic members of this group didn't necessarily initiate that conversation. It was only initiated by the FBI. Now, a critic that would call me a freakish conspiracy theorist would say, yeah, but still, he still did it, or whatever. Yeah, he did, but would he have if the FBI didn't initiate that conversation? If it never came up? Sure, he has the potential capability to do it, but if that reality doesn't manifest in a court of law, technically, would he have done it, without the FBI? And not only that, the FBI agent was like, okay, cool, you're down. All right, what about the other guys? Trying to get in as many people as possible to, in text message, in writing, say, hell yeah, I'm down to stake out her house. They're building a case against these people, a case that may not have existed if he never asked if he wanted to stake Governor Whitmer's house out to begin with. Maybe they would never have done something like that and just continued to chat about edgy bullshit and treason stuff. It's just interesting shit. I just want to make sure I'm covering all of this. Again, we're just kind of skimming each of these. I want to give you guys just like an introductory overview of this. Dude, $54,000 a year for the informant. $6,000 in expenses for a computer, phone, electronics. That's fucking crazy. It's a lot of money to just like inform on someone, I guess. I don't know. There's also the famous story about the Newburgh sting, which is actually kind of in my neck of the woods. This is up in New York, Hudson Valley. So an award-winning 2014 HBO documentary about the case, The Newburgh Sting, showed that the attack plans and materials were all supplied by the FBI informant who coaxed the accused into participating by offering incentives, including $250,000. And they described it once again as a clear case of entrapment. So what they did here, it was, let me see the name. What was the fucking name of it? Either way, they planned on acquiring Stinger missiles to shoot down airplanes flying into Stewart Air Force, I think, over in Newburgh, in that area. Probably as well as other shit, but the thing is they would never have access to any of that if it weren't for the the FBI. Yeah, sorry about that. 2009 Bronx terrorism plot. I mean, they baited these guys in. The documentary goes in quite extensively, but they baited them in. As far as I know, if I remember correctly, one of the people was intelligently... he had mental issues. The IQ wasn't off the charts. He might have had issues, a learning disability of some sort. You come, rolling up in the hood. Fucking Newburgh is kind of known for that. In Lamborghinis and shit, right? Hey, check me out. I'm definitely not a Fed. Hey, man, peep this Stinger missile. You want to shoot down some planes? You want to bomb a federal building? That's how they do it, and they push it as far as they fucking can. Because ordinarily, these people would probably not have ever even tried to do what the FBI coaxed them to do. And maybe they would. Let's say they would. Sometimes they don't have the intellect or the material resources to even do it if they tried. Not everyone has access to fucking plastic explosives. Not everyone has access to Stinger missiles. Like, if you were to wake up tomorrow morning and say, I want to assassinate a powerful figure, like, good luck doing it in, like, any immediate range of time. I mean, you might not even be able to do it at all. Moving on to, speaking of, blowing up a federal building, let's take a look at another case where it seemed like intelligence agency fuckery seemed to be lingering in the background.
Tonight, at the center of it all, of course, is the bombed-out shell of the federal office building, and in its shadow, the exhausted, who for a day and a half now have sifted through its debris and counted its dead and seen up close why they call it terror.
It's like a garbage pile. It's unbelievable. And everywhere you dig, you find somebody. Everywhere.
It's a very slow, tedious process of removing the debris and extricating the fatalities and searching for survivors. You hope and you pray that every time you turn a stone, there'll be a survivor somewhere. It hurts deep down as to why someone would do something of this magnitude.
Right. To think, someone can do something of this magnitude and to have to recover the mangled remains of those that just happen to accidentally get caught up in that. Right. Being vaporized inside the office that they happily walked into for years, every day for work. gets blown up by someone that probably could have been stopped by, you guessed it, the CIA, FBI, etc., etc., etc. More interesting than that last clip, though, is possibly this clip.
One explosion caused, because here's now what we are starting to learn about the succession, or what someone obviously hoped would be a succession of explosions. The first bomb that was in the federal building did go off. It did the damage that you see right there. The second explosive was found and diffused. The third explosive that was found, and they are working on right now as we speak, I understand, both the second and third explosives, if you can imagine this, were larger than the first. So try to imagine two or threefold happening what we've already seen there. It is just incredible to think that there was that much heavy artillery that was somehow moved into the downtown Oklahoma City Federal Building.
Can you imagine that? It was somehow moved to the downtown Oklahoma Federal Building. I mean, I don't know, imagine that. I mean, when in history has anything ever similar happened? If someone asks you that, that's the telltale sign of someone that's uninformed. It's not their fault. They've been taught to be that way.
2 other explosive devices were found that were not detonated, and they were larger than the first.
I think he said another bomb. Another bomb, move back.
Oh my God, another bomb. We just saw, if you were watching there was a white pickup truck backing a trailer into the scene here. They're trying to move people out of the way so they can get it in. Appears to be the Oklahoma County Bomb Squad. It's their bomb disposal unit, essentially, is what it is, and it is what they would use to, if the report that we gave you just a few moments ago turns out to be correct, that they have found a second explosive device of some kind inside this building. They'll back that trailer down there, and the bomb squad folks will go in, and they will use that that trailer. You see the bucket on the back there, sort of, this is how they would transport the explosive device away from this populated area to try to do something with it.
The Justice Department is...
So this was the Oklahoma City bombing, orchestrated allegedly single-handedly by Timothy McVeigh, despite alleged surveillance camera footage of him getting out of the Ryder truck, the moving truck that apparently held the fertilizer bomb. We're told it's a fertilizer bomb, and I believe the narrative have shifted over the years. Despite what you just saw, mainstream news articles, media covering this in live time at the time in the 90s. Maybe 95, that there were multiple bombs, not just more than one. It was 2, it was 3, might have even been 4, I can't remember, but at least 3. But suddenly it's become just Timothy McVeigh, a right-wing extremist, was motivated to attack a federal building because of what he witnessed at the Waco siege of the Branch Davidians, which, by the way, is yet another fucking kerfluffle brought on by intelligence agencies and law enforcement agencies, whether it be fucking the FBI, the ATF, where they just, essentially burned people alive on purpose to look good because, my organization's about to be disbanded. I want to keep my job. Let's turn this into a bigger threat than it actually is. So they concoct a story, these are dangerous individuals, they're religious extremists, they're harboring all of these advanced weapons, automatic weapons, which they were, but they never showed any signs of violence before that, if I remember correctly, even if it was kind of like maybe a freakish group, right? Point is that it wasn't until the groups got embedded in them, the informants came in, the this, the that, shit hit the fucking fan, and it turned into something that a lot of people agree it didn't have to turn into. So Timothy McVeigh, the guy that destroyed this federal building in Oklahoma City, got very angry at the way it was treated. So he decided single-handedly to go and build a bomb, a fertilizer bomb, and destroy half the building, as you see here. But once again, they don't really talk about multiple bombs. They don't talk about why Timothy McVeigh did it. And they certainly don't talk about this, which is very intriguing. This is a New York Times article. Excerpts from Timothy McVeigh, the bomber's letter. This is July 1st, 1998. Now, I want you to follow along. If you're distracted at the moment, snap back to it and pay attention to what I'm about to say. Read along with me here and let me know if you detect any red flags based on the information I just told you about. The following are excerpts from a letter dated October 20th, 1993, and written by Timothy J. McVeigh to his sister Jennifer McVeigh. The idiosyncrasies in spelling and punctuation are McVeigh's. Grandpa McVeigh saw this. He never knew why, but one day, I showed up at his door, freezing outside, in only sweatpants and in total complete breakdown. Gramps, I'm sure, never told anyone about that day, and I respect him greatly for that, as I spent about an hour upstairs losing it. It was almost suicide at that point, but rage, but denial, but acceptance, all these feelings were battling for control. Now here's what led to my current life. It all revolves around my arrival at Fort Bragg for Special Forces. We all took intelligence, psychological adeptness, and a whole battery of other tests. Now remember, this is the bomber writing this. And this was out of a group of 400. One day in formation, 10 Social Security numbers were called out. Not their names, no names. And they were told to leave the formation. You know, formation being when they all stand in a line, they're, at attention, so to speak. And it was the bomber, Timothy McVeigh, that had one of his Social Security numbers called. So the 10 of the people who were called were told that out of the select group of 400, they had scored the highest on certain tests. We had been selected because of our intelligence, our physical makeup, which is 165 pounds, 6 feet tall, being the ultimate warrior type. Timothy McVeigh says I was only slightly off at 160 pounds and 6'11", whatever. And we were to feel special, part of a hand-picked group, right? I'm special. We were all asked to volunteer, talk about peer pressure, to do some, quote, work for the government on the domestic as well as the international front. So what Timothy McVeigh, the Oklahoma City bomber, is talking about in this New York Times article, the same type of resource that people that are critical and skeptical of these ideas and what we talk about here, they would refer to the New York Times to debunk us, but here we're actually using the New York Times to show you that Timothy McVeigh may have been recruited as 10 out of 400 people to work for the government. The guy that ended up blowing up a federal building, he just so happened to be handpicked to work for the government, not only on the international front, but the domestic front, meaning that he'd be working within the confines of the United States border. What I learned next, both from the briefings and from the questions in private talks, included, number one, we would be helping the CIA fly drugs into the U.S. to fund many covert operations. Just right off the bat, let that one sink in. Number two, military consultants were to work hand in hand with civilian police agencies to quiet anyone whom was deemed a security risk. And he puts in parentheses, we would be government-paid assassins. Number three, many other details to verify these last two. See the enclosed article or watch again the movie Lethal Weapon. It also gives you new insight on things like Waco, etc. They were murdered by hitmen. So, the New York Times is out there. I don't know, maybe something has changed since then, but the New York Times published in 1998 this letter that was apparently written by Timothy McVeigh, the bomber of the Oklahoma City Federal Building. And he's outright stating that he was recruited by the CIA. Now, is this the ramblings of a schizophrenic? Is this something that's confirmed fact? I believe, for those that care to look, it is acknowledged as confirmed fact, I guess. And, we could bring up a lot of other details about Oklahoma City bombing that point to the direction of something else going on, such as CIA fuckery, intelligence agency fuckery. We can talk about, for one, the multiple bombs instead of just one. Number two, the idea that Timothy McVeigh is told to act alone, but in reality he was with a partner that was never identified, etc., etc. And we can also discuss just the fact that he himself says that he was involved in that type of stuff, or we can also focus on the mysterious suicide of one of the recovery people. He was either a police officer, I forget his name, he was a fine black guy, from what I heard, really stand-up dude. He was part of the recovery efforts, and it was him that realized whatever he saw inside the building during the recovery, and keep in mind the multiple bomb stuff you saw in the media, it spooked him. And he claimed to have been, it didn't happen the way they say it did. There might have been other people involved. It might have been a government thing. He claimed he was being followed. He was very scared for his life. He told his wife things like this. And he ended up being found dead on the side of a road. His car was there, and his door was open or something. And inside the car, the interior was described as being similar to as if someone butchered a hog inside of it. The blood was just everywhere. And I don't think he was in the car. I think he made it outside of the car and ran into a field or something like that. And he had so many slashes on his body that it was just absurd. Like, you know, it matched like defensive wounds. It was clearly like, it looked like a personal thing. And I guess they identified it or declared it as a suicide, despite all of that. And that's one of those other little echoes, those little waves that might pique your interest. But the letter did that for us, right? That is pretty straightforward, the idea of multiple bombs, etc. That isn't the only one, though. I mean, another somewhat recent example would be the Pulse nightclub massacre. I mean, that one was a huge attack on LGBTQ rights. I mean, just the biggest, in fact, I believe it was the biggest shooting in United States history until a particular other shooting that happened in October of 2017, I believe, in Las Vegas.
Club shooter is Noor Salman, the widow of the Orlando nightclub shooter, is currently on trial on federal terrorism charges for her alleged role in the massacre. 49 people were killed when Omar Mateen opened fire in June of 2016. Yesterday, prosecutors showed the jury surveillance video of the shooting as they laid out a timeline. Today, as they try to prove their case, that video was made public. We caution you, it is graphic. Here's Michelle Miller.
Government attorneys said they showed this video to jurors because they believe it is the clearest evidence they have pointing to Noor Salman as providing material support of aiding and abetting her husband in committing a terrorist attack. The edited courtroom video begins by showing Omar Mateen buying a ticket before walking into Pulse as clubgoers are enjoying Last Call. It's just before 2 a.m. Mateen then leaves the building, but returns less than 10 minutes later and almost immediately opens fire into the main part of the club with his semi-automatic rifle. After appearing to fire off several shots, he walks toward the back of the club, firing again, methodically picking off patrons. He appears to shoot some victims once they are already down. At one point, Mateen drops a used clip and reloads. Stalking back and forth between rooms, he continues to fire away and then heads toward the restroom, where people can be seen on cell phone video huddled in fear. At 2:07, roughly 6 minutes after he started shooting, police entered the building with guns drawn. As they search inside for Mateen, they are seen stepping over victims.
Yes, get outside, get outside.
And evacuating as many who are still alive as possible.
If you can move, you need to leave.
By 2:37, survivors can be seen climbing out of the building as law enforcement continues to enter the club. That video.
So, you can look at this through the filter, through two different filters. You can look at it through the filter that they wish you to, which is that this is another terrible attack on the LGBTQ community. In fact, make it a double whammy. This is actually another example of the usage of assault weapons to kill innocent human beings. We have to ban the weapons, and not only that, we have to care for LGBTQ rights even more than we already do. So this was a not racially motivated attack, but, you know, a bigoted attack, another extremist. Now, this was a Muslim man. His name was, I believe, Omar Mateen. Now, maybe he didn't agree with homosexuality, and I actually should clarify, Pulse nightclub, I believe, was a iconic or fairly popular nightclub for gay people, frequently attended for them, I guess. That was the place. Fair enough. And he walks in and he says, "Oh, you guys having a good day? Well, I'm gonna just mow you down with an assault rifle, right? Because you're gay." And that's what we were told. And we got to ban those assault rifles too. But here's the thing. If you recall, at the beginning of this video, they talked about the evidence coming out to indict the wife of Omar Mateen, apparently having given material support to this attack, as if she knew. She actively supported Omar Mateen because she hates gay people just as much as him because she's Muslim and stuff.
To jurors because they believe it is the clearest evidence they have pointing to Noor Salman as providing material support of aiding and abetting her husband in committing a terrorist attack.
So it's a terrorist attack, right? Of course. And he's a Muslim, so Muslim terrorist. There's no other such thing, right? Well, you know, you gotta, maybe she did know. I don't know all the details. She claims she doesn't know, I believe. Maybe she did know. Fair enough. Okay, I would imagine maybe there was an inkling of that. She's married to the guy. He's collecting weapons. He's, I don't know, behaving strangely. Well, I mean, you would expect, though, that all pertinent details in her trial would be put forth, because once again, we live in America, and we do expect a proper, a court of law, like to be treated properly by the legal system. Not like that always happens, but we try, at least in many cases. But throughout the entirety of her trial, it was never brought up that the shooter's father was an FBI informant. All right? So once again, we have an FBI informant making waves just somehow in the background of a terrible event like, the Pulse nightclub shooting. I mean, now that you know that this guy's father was an FBI informant and somehow completely missed this, now look at this this footage through the lens of knowing that an FBI informant was involved in it.
It's just before 2 a.m. Mateen then leaves the building, but returns less than 10 minutes later and almost immediately opens fire into the main part of the club with his semi-automatic rifle. After appearing to fire off several shots, he walks toward the back of the club, firing again, methodically picking off patrons. He appears to shoot some victims once they are already down.
So in some way, shape, or form, I guess his father, who's been working for the FBI for some time, just had no inkling that his son was about to do this. All right, I don't know, maybe his son and him don't talk that much, but his dad has linked up with the FBI, and after all, they seem to be pretty good at foiling plots to, I don't know, abduct governors, to interfere in plots of shooting planes down in Newburgh with Stinger missiles. I mean, they stop all that. But not this one, though. They didn't stop this one, though, even though the FBI guy is the father of the kid who was acquiring weaponry and stuff and hated gays, so he went and shot 50 of them or whatever. We didn't catch that one. Sorry, my bad. Just wasn't... Got a lot of stuff on my plate recently with the FBI and all. No, I highly doubt that. So the lawyer for the wife, the one that is being put forth as providing material evidence for him, they fucking said, what the fuck is that about? They dropped this bomb on them in the middle of her defense. Her life relies on it. She's either guilty of a terrorist attack or not. Yeah, I mean, let's just drop this in at the end of her trial, though, because that doesn't fucking change anything at all. The father of the 29-year-old who killed 49 people at an Orlando nightclub in the summer of 2016 was an FBI informant who came under scrutiny himself after investigators found receipts for money transfers to Turkey and Afghanistan in the wake of the mass shooting. The revelation came in documents filed by attorneys for the shooter's wife, Noor Salman, who is on trial in Orlando on allegations that she aided and abetted her husband's attack and obstructed law enforcement's investigation into it. And like I said, I'm not saying she's necessarily innocent, but what I'm saying is holding back this type of damning information that changes, in my opinion, everything, that's not fair for anyone. And you would expect to, I would hope, you would be treated the same way, equally and fairly, because, if the evidence is damning, that's all that matters. This shit fucking shakes everything up. That should be a retrial. Prosecutors argue that Salman essentially admitted to the FBI that she knew what her husband was about to do. Well, maybe she is guilty, like I said. Defense attorneys argue that she was a victim of her husband's abuse and infidelity. The attack at the Pulse nightclub by her husband, Omar Mateen, is one of the deadliest mass shootings on U.S. soil. It would only hold that record for a couple of years, though, until Stevie Paddock came along, ex-NASA boy, and dude that is a private pilot that shares a tail number with a U.S. government defense contractor, also fitting the pattern. Salman's trial has been underway for weeks, but defense attorneys argued that they were not informed until Saturday of the father's work for the FBI. What the fuck, dude? You know what I'm saying? Jesus Christ. It's in the background of all this shit. It's there. And need I remind you of another famous incident that the FBI was also involved in? The 1993 World Trade Center bombing.
More than 7 hours after the rescue and evacuation effort began, emergency workers were worried. Some people might still be trapped in the uppermost floors of the 110-story Twin Towers. People who by now would be scared.
If there's somebody trapped out there, what must they be going through right now?
Panic, a feeling of
total isolation, the forgottenness. The world has just forgotten them, and they're all on their own.
All afternoon, they'd climbed the stairs, going floor to floor. Early on, it was a slow process, trying to get thousands of people out through smoke and darkness.
We will go. And it's interesting to note, of course, most obviously, is that less than a decade later, another incident involving intelligence agencies, this time more than the FBI, but those from around the world, whether it's Mossad, whether it's CIA, et cetera, would end up actually doing the job finally and bringing the towers down completely, which was probably the plan all along. But yes, the FBI was heavily embedded in the plot to even bomb the trade centers to begin with in 1993. Here we have an article published October 23rd, 2011. Tapes reveal role of FBI in bombing. Leaked phone taps are embarrassing investigators during the World Trade Center trial. And just quickly to summarize, they had a few different ideas as to how to handle the bomb. For instance, things like, no, we need an actual fucking timer for this thing, otherwise it won't be realistic, or things like that, right? And despite being highly embedded in this entire investigation, because this was wrapped up in not even just the World Trade Center, there was other foiled plots that apparently got foiled by the FBI, right? The big heroes. And if that's true, good job on them, right? But this one wasn't foiled, despite the fact the FBI was talking one-on-one with one of the people involved in the cell that attacked or was going to attack the World Trade Center. Now, it's just amazing to me that something can happen like this, despite you having complete control, maybe not complete control, but the ability to do it anyway. And I have a feeling it's the FBI's tendency to want to appear as heroes, right, that allows this to happen. The idea of we're going to let this go as far as possible. I mean, let's let them build a real timer. Let's let them build a real bomb so we can say and be honest with the public, hey, we captured them with a bomb. The only thing we're not telling them is that we helped them build it. See, it's a lot less impactful if the FBI says, yeah, we busted a group of people in the early beginnings of what could have been a terrorist attack. Well, what do you mean what could have been? I mean, maybe they weren't going to do it at all. Yeah, so it's like it looks better if they have a fucking bomb. They could stand next to it with their fucking K9 or whatever in an awesome photo put on the FBI website. And it's like, we did it. It's because of us. And they had a bomb, but not anymore because of us. But sometimes these bombs still blow up and they become iconic moments in U.S. or world history. And if you want to just go to the show notes, use that as an entry point to the rabbit hole. This is an introductory course into why looking at the people Epstein may possibly involved with, this is the type of shit that they are involved with. I'm not trying to say that, yeah, Epstein had a role in Iran-Contra. I should have said this earlier, right, because I put those visuals in, and it might give that impression. I'm not saying that necessarily, but I'm saying that Iran-Contra stuff involved drug trafficking and weapons trafficking. And Epstein is being accused by multiple different sources that seem credible that he was doing similar shit, which would therein, reasonably, you could speculate that would shift him into a category of not just like somewhat powerful people, but I'm talking about world controllers, the things that drive and guide society, okay, without us ever knowing. Iran-Contra may never have been discovered, right? Other than the due diligence of people like Gary Webb and people that forced the hand of Congress and the Oversight Committee to have to investigate it. We may not have never known about it. It begs the question, what else don't we know about, right? But, of course, I mean, it doesn't end there. We have this famous, iconic incident you might remember. It wants to load. All right, what are you doing? You thinking about it? This is 50 seconds long. You're doing okay. You can do it. Oh yeah, I know 50 seconds is a lot for you, but there you go. Might remember that as being titled the Boston Marathon Bombing Attack.
Never before seen video of the Boston Marathon attack at the moment that the bomb goes off. In one video shown for the first time in court today during Jahar Tsarnaev's trial, Tsarnaev appears to be seen. He's circled there. You can see him on your screen. He's watching the marathon. The first blast goes off. The crowd turns to look, and Tsarnaev walks away, and the second blast detonates. Deb Farrick is out front for us in Boston.
Nearly 4 hours after the race began, the Tsarnaev brothers rounded the corner together onto the marathon route. Tamerlan in the lead, the younger Jahar keeping pace. Then the two split up, Tamerlan heading to the finish line. Multiple images show Jahar Tsarnaev standing by himself for nearly 4 minutes. Among spectators, several of them children. At 2:49, records show using a disposable phone bought the day before. Jahar, seen here, calls his brother. Moments later, the first bomb explodes. Jahar moves quickly in the opposite direction, reaching the corner just as the second bomb detonates. Neither Jahar nor Tamerlan have their backpacks.
So the idea is they drop their backpacks, they plant the crock pot bomb, the old famous crock pot bomber technique, and it's apparently done by the Tsarnaev brothers, right? There was 2 people in this, and I forget the exact details of how this case concluded, but there was a giant manhunt, a giant chase for this, which was basically an overhaul of any types of freedoms for a very small moment within the city of Boston. You had armored vehicles prowling neighborhoods for this guy. See if there's any footage of that. It's pretty interesting.
The force of the 2 blasts
bombs or other co-conspirators.
We're collecting pieces of
after the attack.
A couple words walk
quickly to the left, but then walks.
I'm trying to find footage. I mean, I guess you guys get the point, but there's footage of like armored vehicles and shit in people's neighborhoods.
Dan Linsky of the Boston Police Department and offered whatever service. Searching our last building after a particularly long and tiring day, somewhere around 6 o'clock that evening, we heard the call go out that the shots had been fired. They had a suspect in a boat. Any tactical teams nearby were requested to respond. So we deployed, got into the perimeter of the house, and as luck would have it, we were the first 2 teams to get to 67 Franklin Street. And there in the driveway was the now infamous boat. You know, as more assets came on.
So one of the suspects, the younger one, Zokar maybe, I think Tamerlane or whatever was his older brother. So his older brother died in a shootout, or he got hit by a car, or fucking both. Do you guys remember that shit? He just died in like ridiculous circumstances. He got fucked up. His younger brother ran into some fucking fishing boat and was captured on footage by fucking robots and stuff, and just they were shooting the boat up and stuff. Now, you might recall the famous magazine, I'm going to spell his name wrong, hold on. I think it was Rolling Stone. Let me double check. They put him on the cover of like a very famous magazine, like romanticizing him. Here he is, because he was a sexy terrorist, right? Sexy young terrorist. There, yo, he looks, yo. Switch out the bomber title for and put like some indie band name in its place, and you have like a normal Rolling Stone cover. But this guy was the dude that blew people to bits, their legs off, etc. I mean, I like my legs. I wouldn't want them to disappear and stuff. But yeah, this guy makes people have their legs disappear. Let's put him on the Rolling Stone cover. Here we go. You like your legs? They're gone now. I'm on the Rolling Stone cover. I'm a hot young terrorist. Well, you know, I mean, that's absurd on its face already. I mean, it's just not a good look, even though it was an iconic moment. The way they pictured him was in more of a flattering romantic light, where, like, aesthetically, they could have changed the entire issue. The issue isn't him being on a cover of a magazine, because he could have just as equally been able to have been covered on the same or similar magazine as a bad guy. Put a fucking vignette around the frame and put some red undertones to it and up the saturation, and you got an evil looking terrorist. But no, let's put a sexy picture of him up there, right? But that's baby bullshit. That's stuff that's reasonable, but not that deep. This is the stuff that's not reasonable, but also very deep. Defense says FBI wanted marathon bombing suspect as informant. Right. So here we go. The older brother of the guy on the magazine cover. Well, I mean, he seemed like a really good candidate as an FBI informant. We think he'd be great. So, defense attorneys for suspected Boston Marathon bomber Dzhokhar Tsarnaev say sometime before the bombing, his older brother, Tamerlan, was approached by the FBI and was asked to be an informant. I mean, what are the chances of that? So if someone comes into picture a room with multiple different doors. You have the FBI involvement in the World Trade Center bombing door. You have the Boston Marathon FBI informant bombing door. You've got all these different doors where the FBI is involved in a fucking bombing. You got the Timothy McVeigh weird letter to his sister, hey, peep this, I'm now a CIA super assassin door. And if you only stick to that door, you'll never know that this is actually quite a common occurrence and should actually be have more attention paid to it. But that is not how the world is built. It's built to ensure that you only explore one door at a time and never check out the others. And that's where the spell casting, the illusions, the lies, the propaganda, the mind control, etc., dopamine hijack shit comes in, to make you never want to even entertain the idea that this is possible. You might stumble on it, but it's still constructed in a way that doesn't incentivize or motivate you to look into other situations where something similar might have went down. That's perfect for the people doing this type of shit. In a letter from February made public in a motion filed in federal court today, the attorneys say the FBI made, quote, more than one visit to talk to Tamerlan and two of his associates. Right, that's another theme. There tends to be a visit to whoever's about to do the shooting, to whoever's about to do the bombing. The FBI always check in with them like a week beforehand. Hey, what's up? You ready to go for the big day or whatever? If I remember, Parkland, I'll just say it now, Parkland school shooting has that situation too. So in case I forget to bring that up, that's one example. So the FBI questioned Tamerlan about his internet searches and asked him to be an informant. Now, prosecutors responded that they had no evidence the FBI solicited Tamerlan. So once again, there's that doubt instilled in this in the mainstream media, and maybe it's real doubt or maybe it is concocted doubt. So, as a byproduct of the propaganda that doesn't want you thinking too deeply into this, maybe the FBI actually didn't do any of this. But the very fact that information exists to suggest that he did, like the fact that the argument exists to begin with, that the FBI solicited a bomber, someone who would later become a bomber. The fact that that's there is once again pretty telling. The fact that the other younger brother got put on a fucking Rolling Stone cover looking like a sex symbol is kind of telling. It's a red flag for fuckery. And if you look, you would know that. And if you don't, well, that's not my fucking problem, right? It's the one I'm trying to solve, but it really isn't my problem. The defense team says this evidence could provide insight into Tamerlan's mindset before the bombing, and it could bolster the defense's case that his younger brother Dzhokhar was dragged into the bombing by Tamerlan. Now, Tamerlan was killed in a shootout with police, and Dzhokhar was captured after a manhunt that shut down most of Boston like we covered before. That was it. Something about a car, something about Tamerlan getting shot, and then Dzhokhar fled to a fishing boat, peeped this boat, gonna hide in it and stuff, and uh-oh, here comes a militarized police force. They got me. The defense attorneys say they learned of the alleged FBI solicitation through interviews with the family, as well as other sources and notes. Quote, we do not suggest that these contacts are to be blamed and have no evidence to suggest that they were improper, but rather view them as an important part of the story of Tamerlan's decline, the defense writes. Since Tamerlan is dead, the government is a source of corroboration that these visits did in fact occur and of what was said during them. So it looks like the defense of the bombers are trying to build a case saying, look, like the only reason he did this was, if I'm reading this right, is because of you guys. You guys egged him on. His mental state was fine because until you guys fucking showed up. And it was only then did you start talking about bombs and crockpot bombs and nonsense, just like the other cases we just covered. Would these people do these things if they weren't egged on? Would the Whitmer group do this if they weren't egged on by the FBI? Hey, let's go stalk a governor real quick. Also, bring your friends too, as many as possible, right? Would this happen if the polls? Jesus, you know, it's just on and on. So you should be seeing a pattern emerging right now. And once again, to tie the theme of this video back, these are the people conducting everything I just showed you. These are the people that Jeffrey Epstein is alleged to be brushing shoulders and hanging out with. These are the people in his social sphere. It's not powerful politicians by itself. It's people above that. It's hedge fund managers. It's bankers. It's the World Economic Forum types. It's the Council on Foreign Relations. It's the Trilateral Commission, of which, by the way, he was a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. Jeffrey Epstein, he was a member of the Trilateral Commission. Ghislaine Maxwell, his partner, of whom I kind of look at more as a fucking ringleader, Epstein only being the fucking face and the fall guy if shit were to ever hit the fan. She spoke in front of the United Nations about one of her companies. Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, their foundation, the Clinton Foundation, they funded Terramar, the very same organization that Ghislaine was talking about in front of the United Nations. In fact, one of Jeffrey Epstein's lawyers claimed that Jeffrey Epstein and his team were partially responsible for the creation of the Clinton Foundation to begin with. These are the type of people we are dealing with. The type of people who dictate whether or not you might walk outside one day on a nice day in Israel and determine whether or not a shell from a bomb is going to land in the neighborhood or whatever, or whether or not we can rely on the Iron Dome from working, or whether or not a car bomb will go off in a certain area of the world. Like that's the type of people we're up against. Is what I'm trying to illustrate here. When you look at Epstein, don't picture him raping legions of underage girls. That's bad enough. Instead, look at him as someone that chills with presidents, prime ministers, and world movers while he's doing that. At the same time, selling weapons and maybe drugs too. That's Jeffrey Epstein. He doesn't stop at the women, right? Doesn't have a good moral compass to begin with. Raping, you know, I've done a lot of bad things. Raping is bad enough. I think I'll keep it there. I'm not going to do anything else. I'd certainly never hurt anyone to ensure my secrets are kept. I just don't engage in violence. I'm playing a high-stakes game, and violence is not necessary. Despite, like people have been killed for a lot less money. Anyway, here's another example. Whitey Bulger's trial conspiracy. John Connolly speaks. You guys have heard of Whitey Bulger, the iconic person. Honestly, I don't have the energy to actually look into it for you, like to give you context on this one. If you know him, you know him. If you don't, I implore you to look it up after this with the context of what I'm about to show you. In the 12 months since notorious mobster James Whitey Bulger was captured, he has been revealed to have feet of clay. Stripped of his power, Bulger awaits some form of justice, be it death from old age or adjudication in federal court, where he stands accused of 19 murders. 19 murders! Just, you know, your everyday casual murder and stuff. Either way, Bulger will be made to pay, though it has become increasingly apparent that the many people and institutions of government that made Whitey Bulger possible will not be held accountable. Let me repeat that. Though it is becoming increasingly apparent that the many people and institutions of government that made Whitey Bulger possible will not be made accountable. Read the language choice there carefully. This isn't a matter of helping him, just giving him a small boost, just minor assistance here and there, what have you. Whitey Bulger, the man accused of 19 murders in the mafia, well, you know, he wouldn't have been possible without the number of institutions of government that helped him along, right? So it's more than just helping him along, it's creating him, right? Creating the boogeyman to then pass regulations to combat. Problem, reaction, solution, all of which being engineered by the same group of people. Having lived 16 years on the run, 12 of those in an apartment near the beach in Santa Monica, California, with $822,000 in cash and an arsenal of weapons stashed in a wall, Bulger was finally pinched after a tipster contacted the FBI with info about his fugitive girlfriend, Catherine Grieg. Now, you might look at that as dope. Oh, sweet, yo, FBI was given a tip and they acted on it really quick. That's dope. Another guy, a bad boy off the streets. Good job, FBI. Well, hold your horses, you fucking weirdo. Bulger and Grieg, age 61, were arrested on June 23, 2011, and returned to Boston, where Whitey had for nearly a quarter century maintained a criminal business that included extortion, legal gambling, fraud, etc., including murder. Right? Now, let's get to the real good shit. The evidence against Whitey Bulger is formidable. Since he went on the run in January of 1995, most of his closest associates have cut deals with the government and testified at various hearings and trials, and they are likely to testify against Whitey at his trial. Blah, blah, blah. Let me go on to this. He and his gangster partner, Steve Flemmi, were also working as top informants for the FBI. So now we have the Mafia FBI connection. Now we have a mainstream news article, once again, perhaps even a mainstream media outlet that might be referred to by your left-leaning critic friend, someone that hates all conspiracy theorists, as being QAnon rabid Trump supporters. They would use this type of article to combat the ideas you put forth. But here we are wielding their weapons against them and saying, no, here's yet another example of someone you trust and love. Remember, you were sucking James Comey's cock immediately after Trump was elected because James Comey was going to save us from the Russians and stuff, which, by the way, where did that story go? I thought, we were infiltrated by the Russians because Trump was like a Russian puppet and stuff. Where'd that go? Well, that tall freak, maybe he's outstanding in a fucking cornfield somewhere. If you get the reference, you get it. If you're not, I can't help you. But anyway, those people would use something like this to, shoot down your fucking conspiratorial tinfoil hat type ideas, when in reality, it's these types of stories. If you know where to look and you look carefully, you'll see a pattern emerge. And if you aren't seeing one emerge just from the stories I've selected today, which, by the way, isn't even comprehensive, guys, like a real learned researcher that's been doing this for far longer than me, if they saw this video, they'd probably call it a very good introductory course, but to claim that it's extremely extensive and in-depth would not be true. And I never called it as such. I want to introduce those that aren't aware of this type of behavior, this type of activity. I want to introduce them to it. Because those same people may have an interest in people like Jeffrey Epstein, right? After all, Harvey Weinstein, feminist rights, right? Me too, me too. It's the light Diet Coke version of Pizzagate. For once, we had at least their eyes directed to kind of the stuff we're talking about. Even if they don't believe Pizzagate is real and they don't know that Harvey Weinstein is also involved with Epstein, the fact is that their heart is in the right place. They seem to have an interest in rich, powerful people going down, even if it's all about the patriarchy and stuff. That can be exploited by videos like this. If you realize that those, bringing down the patriarchy is not about just white middle-aged men, it's about the people that, kind of push those guys along. There's also another just general list as well. Once again, all in the show notes. And by the way, since we're getting to the end of this, and when I say we're getting to the end, I mean we probably have another 25 minutes, so, don't get going anywhere. We're getting to the end of this. I'll jump into the comments after, so definitely hang around and I'll address any donations or anyone giving me good stuff. Here's like a general list that I found to be quite reputable because they list the source, and these sources are all mainstream media outlets, which, once again, we typically deem as being full of bullshit, but in the case of trying to bring the critics in, well, they would fucking love to see the Wall Street Journal used as a piece of evidence, since that's all they refer to confirm their reality and their beliefs on it. This is the New York Times. This is Newsweek, Bloomberg, NBC News, Seattle Times. Like, these are reputable sources in the minds of someone that has no dopamine and is jerking off 24/7, eating candy, and completely controlled by whoever put them in the Matrix. The FBI spied on the Barry Goldwater campaign at President Johnson's direction. The FBI was warned about the 9/11 terrorists, but failed to stop them. That's another example. I mean, don't you recall the summer before 9/11, very powerful people were informed not to even take commercial airlines or fly at all. They were all set up with like either private channels, private flights, etc., etc. They were specifically warned to not fly commercial at all. Going by memory, but I recall specifically something like that. That was indicative of sort of like an inside tip. Like, hey, bro, we know something's going to go down. Don't fly on any Boeing airliners for the next 2 months, okay? because Larry Silverstein, another buddy of ours, he's about to take out terrorist insurance on this tower that's about to get collapsed by planes. But we put bombs in there too with the help of Mossad and stuff. So yeah, just don't get on any planes for a couple months. Don't ask why. We got you. We're the FBI and stuff. Very trustworthy. But yeah, even though they told people not to get on the planes because they knew something was coming, they still weren't able to stop it. A critic might say, oh, well, they tried their best. Not everything could be stopped and foiled. Think of how elaborate 9/11 is. Well, yes. Think about how elaborate 9/11 is, says the critic who believes that Osama bin Laden, with a ragtag group of individuals that previously were also backed by the CIA, were able to orchestrate the most elaborate attack on U.S. soil in the history of our country. Yeah, you're right. Think about that. You see, it's all just fallacies. It's all contradictions. They go in circles. And that's why hopefully videos like this assist them in breaking out of that and at least looking at it. I don't know. They don't have to believe it. At least fucking look at it. Don't be a bitch about it. The FBI framed 4 men for murder. Guess can't I gotta get those numbers up. Can't solve that murder. Guess Jamal did it. The FBI was warned about a terrorist planning to blow up the New York City subway system. He backed out of the attack. The underwear bomber. That might even go further. That's a scope of another video. Remember the underwear bomber, guys. I don't think this website is available anymore. I checked this earlier, which is why I kind of abandoned this as a lead. The underwear bomber, fuck. You know, if I speak any further about him, I might run the risk of, saying incorrect things, because I have yet to look fully into that. But the idea of the underwear bomber, that was a guy, that's 2009, that's 8 years after 9/11. So the initial shutdowns, the TSA, the implementations of new security, the Patriot Act, right, the regulations that affected daily life because of 9/11 are already in place. So the underwear bomber was like just a booster shot to keep that elevated stress level about Middle Eastern terrorism up. And apparently, I think he used like a fairly exotic type of weapon for that, right? After all, it was an underwear bomb. It was a very powerful bomb that could be concealed in shoes or underwear, whatever. But they had some type of fucking involvement with that too, where once again, they failed to stop it. Once again, they failed to prevent any of it. And because of their failure, we had to face more freedoms, more security given over to the people that swear to God they're going to protect us, because we still believe in God and stuff. God is pretty cool. I'm a world leader. I love God, especially Jesus Christ. Ignore the birth rates and the open borders and stuff, and the burning churches in Europe and stuff. The FBI was warned about a terrorist planning. Yeah, I got that. Oh yeah, Fort Hood. That was, again, another shooting. They were warned about the Fort Hood terrorist, Nidal Hassan, but once again, they failed to stop him. FBI was warned about 3 Americans who joined ISIS in Syria, but they failed to stop them as well. The FBI was warned about an ISIS-inspired American who killed 3 in Washington, 1 in New Jersey, but failed to stop him. Oh, I would like to make clear, on BitChute, I'll plug my BitChute at this moment because it's relevant. I have a video called, what was it? From school shooter training camps to the World Trade Center or something like that. Oh, maybe I don't have it up here. It's up on Odyssey.com. Go to Odyssey.com and you'll find, if you search MemoryHold, you'll find entire backups of my last 2 YouTube channels. MemoryHold 2.0 that has like 57 videos. 3.0 that has like 25 videos before I got banned. One of those videos is about the connection between the World Trade Center bombing and guess fucking what? Another example that bolsters our point here. The school shooter training camps that were in Alabama and New Mexico? Out in the desert in New Mexico, a guy was training children to become school shooters. They had a weapons range, they had weapons, they were shooting actively, they had tunnels built. Now, mind you, the FBI had been doing recon on them, investigating them, surveilling them actively for a very long time, for almost a year. However, in that year, a little boy went missing. And it was a big deal. You might have gotten an Amber Alert about it on your phone, and it might have distracted you, right? It might have woken you up early, and you might remember it if you were in New Mexico, right? But turns out that little boy ended up on that school shooter training camp, and he was abducted, stolen, taken, whatever, to be a professional school shooter, even better than the types of Nicholas Cruz and stuff. And, well, the FBI was surveilling them at that time. They should have seen that little boy. And in fact, There's testimony out there that suggests they did, and they still didn't do anything because the guy that owns the land or is adjacent to it witnessed all of this happening and saw something crazy going on. And in fact, not only that, while looking at the school shooter training camp that just popped up in his fucking New Mexican backyard, they see the missing boy. He calls the FBI right off the bat. He's like, guys, I'm the hero. I found your fucking missing boy. He's right there. Literally, if you come in, swoop in fucking like you did with Waco to save that little boy, because that's my impression of what the FBI does. Protect and serve and stuff with the police. Maybe you're coordinating with local police. Now, they just let it happen. They watched as the founder of that school shooting training camp actually abused him in satanic-type exorcisms and then eventually killed him. So if you want to know how that story ended up and stuff, it's not quite over yet, though, because the guy that ran that camp, well, I believe it was his father or a family member that was an unindicted co-conspirator of the 1993 World Trade Center bombing attack. So once again, we have the FBI involved in that. God, they got me. The bomb went off before I could do anything. Sorry about that. I know me and the attacker have been talking for like a year and stuff, but that bomb, I didn't know he'd set it off so quick. It's fucking my fault. I'm sorry about that. And then after that, there's this school shooter training compound, also by an unindicted coach. Fuck, the missing boy was there the whole time. I swear, Bill, did I not say that was that missing boy and we should do something? I know I said it. They just killed him too quick, I guess. I mean, we're going to do it, but they just killed him too quick, I guess. Meanwhile, the unindicted co-conspirator of the bombing attack at the World Trade Center in 93 was a guess by Bloomberg at a meeting on how to protect dangerous attacks. And he's like, oh shit, he's at the meeting? Yo, he wasn't here. What the fuck are you talking about, reporter? Because the reporters got wind that, the World Trade Center bomber is chilling with you for that meeting about how to prevent attacks and shit. He kind of planned the attack and stuff. No, he's not here. What are you, crazy? Bloomberg said. Oh shit, he was here. That's when Bloomberg realizes he fucked up. Oh yeah, nah, I mean, he was just, I didn't know that bomber was here or whatever. That bomber that should have been flagged on like nationwide databases and stuff that might have been flagged even if he entered the country. Yeah, I didn't know he was in the same room as me or whatever. I got an excuse. Oh, excuse me. Bloomberg says, I know why he was there. To best prevent other attacks, which was the subject of the meeting that somehow he found himself in, the only way to prevent a future attack is to talk to people who plan attacks. Now, if I were Bloomberg, that would be the political answer I'd give. Now, that rant should prove to you that we're just absolutely fucking at the whim of people that are constantly in the background of major events that you might otherwise go into the office every morning and talk about for a week. That might become the big news story that dominates the headlines, even if you're not interested for a week or two, like Israel and the Iron Dome. That school shooting happens, that Pulse nightclub shooting happens, that's all you're hearing about. For days, for a week, for more than that. And oftentimes, the very same people that Jeffrey Epstein, whom we know as only being a child sex trafficker, is involved with. That's what we're dealing with here. And I'm hoping this is becoming clear, because if it isn't, I don't think I can actually help you. I mean, I appreciate your viewing and stuff, but I don't fucking know if I can help you at this point, dude, if you still doubt this shit. We also, we have the CIA also spying on Senate computers, because the part of the Senate that was also investigating CIA crimes into, maybe it was interrogation techniques or some shit, enhanced interrogations, what they called it. Yeah, they broke into those computers and stuff. Gotta go fuck with Congress and the senators real quick on the CIA. It's just fucking retarded. And half of these I don't even know about. Like I said, I'm not an expert on every single piece. I just know enough to, I think, hopefully have the ability to convince people that are skeptical that this is a real deal. You know what I'm saying? So let me check the notes real quick. And it all goes back. Yeah, that's what I wanted to tie this up nice and tight with a little bow on top. Let's consider the fact that, the context of intelligence agency fuckery among similar people like Jeffrey Epstein. Once again, spoken about in my last video, which can only be found on BitChute. I have a clip available on YouTube, MemoryHold 4.0, but only a clip, because the rest would get me banned. I'm going to get banned anyway, but might as well try and last as long as possible. People like Harvey Weinstein, which was connected to Epstein. There's victim allegations, as well as an allegation by Jean-Luc Brunel, testimony, that Harvey Weinstein in France with Jeffrey Epstein getting a massage from one of Jeffrey Epstein's favorite underage sex slaves. Harvey wanted more than just a massage. He went to go get physical with her, maybe a good old rape for the rapers like Harvey and Jeffrey and stuff. But Harvey didn't know he was fucking with one of Jeffrey Epstein's favorite pieces of underage property. And he said, "Hey, mister, get the fuck out of my house. You're acting like a pig." And then he turns to whoever just witnessed the atrocity that just happened. Yeah, fucking Harvey, what a pig, right? Meanwhile, the accusations of Harvey being a pig is coming from someone that rapes, once again, legions of underage children by the hundreds or thousands and is a child sex trafficker. Once again, more proof positive that these people don't have a moral compass, because Jeffrey Epstein seemed to not even be aware of the moral abhorrency of what he was doing to begin with. So Harvey, on top of that, he used an intelligence agency composed almost entirely of ex-intelligence special operators from Israel, the Mossad, or whatever other intelligence agency in Israel. They retired from there, or whatever. They moved from the actual government intelligence side, and they moved into the corporate intelligence side, and created the corporation called Black Cube, which specializes in corporate surveillance, essentially. And Black Cube, well, their entire team has the tools, the assets, the resources. Basically, they're an extension of the government, except Israel's government. Well, Harvey Weinstein, check that last name, it's Steen, right? Well, he's a Jewish man. God forbid he's Jewish. I hate to come across anti-Semitic here, because guess what? I'm not. I'm just saying Weinstein is Jewish. Israel has this dope fucking Black Cube company composed of their super special agents and spies. Well, Harvey used them to quash any allegations against him. So like when Rose McGowan came out and said, yeah, that guy has a weird dick and he raped me and stuff, and he has to get injected with a needle before he rapes me. Well, the intelligence agency combated her. And that includes stalking, surveillance, recon. That includes any misinformation, disinformation. That includes spreading rumors. It includes, they called it a hit list. One of the spies was featured on 60 Minutes, and they claim, literally, one of the spies that Harvey said, hey, yo, I got a job for you real quick, spy. Hey, listen, I raped a bunch of girls, and I got to make sure that you watch them so I know when they're going to report things to the media and stuff about me. He never told him that. He said, yeah, these are corporate rivals that I need you to check out. And I made the joke in the last episode that, like, you'd figure that these spies might give a shit when they start to realize that the corporate rivals, rivals to one of the most popular Hollywood moguls in history, are all 20-year-old, small, pretty ladies. Those are all corporate rivals. Not to say they can't be. Oh, my God. Listen, for those of you that are woke out there and you just said that women, accuse me of saying women can't be special in Hollywood moguls, I want to just clarify. All I'm saying is the fact that, they're fairly young, and the chances of them ever posing a business type of threat to Harvey is very slim. But again, spies do what they're paid to do. They don't ask questions. They probably realize that. They just didn't think it was for rapes. Or they did think it was for rapes. I don't know. It's my point. And once again, the Black Cube symbolism, 666, Saturn worship, etc., and how that plays into Israel and their fucking ideology. So Harvey's already well known as using that type of shit. Well, let's just cut to the chase. We talked about the Iron Dome. How the fuck is Jeffrey Epstein related to missiles and this and that, etc., etc.? Well, Jeffrey Epstein was the one hanging out with Ehud Barak. He's a former prime minister of Israel, someone who clearly has control over whether or not Israel has the capability to defend itself from the very footage I showed you in the intro with missiles and stuff. So Epstein, who's possibly a weapons trafficker from the 80s, visiting the Pentagon, national security issues he's working on at the highest level where it gets dangerous, apparently, conducting sexual blackmail activity on part of world intelligence agencies like the United States, maybe the CIA, maybe it's another agency, maybe it's Mossad, maybe he works for them occasionally, just like his partner, Ghislaine Maxwell's dad, did. Well, he's chilling with Ehud Barak, and guess what? One of Epstein's victims says, oh yeah, no, Jeffrey Epstein made me have sex with Ehud Barak, the former leader of Israel, the same guy that has control over the whole Iron Dome stuff and the missiles and the whole little scuffle over there in the shit pit that is the desert. But no, Jeffrey Epstein The only thing he does is he fucks underage girls, and he's a creepy old man and stuff. I saw that on Netflix. He didn't have cameras or nothing. Didn't sell no guns or stuff. He just popped into existence in the 2000s, hanging with presidents and stuff. That's what Epstein was. He didn't do anything to earn that reputation, to earn that role, to earn that employment, to earn being in the presence of people that are not only the most powerful in the world, but those that are above them, those that influence the direction in which it turns. After all, what did Virginia Roberts Giuffre, one of Jeffrey Epstein's victims and also one of Prince Andrew's victims, like the royal family, right? Another world mover, right? Well, what did Virginia Roberts Giuffre say when she was on Jeffrey Epstein's private island, Little St. James in the Virgin Islands, and saw Bill Clinton there? Well, she asked Jeffy boy, what's Bill Clinton doing here? For God's sakes, he's the former president of the most powerful country in the world. Jeffrey Epstein calmly turned to her and said, Bill Clinton is here because he owes me a favor. So I'd like to wind the video down with those details. How can you possibly believe that Epstein is just what we're being told he is? The information is out there that he was far more than that, even in your favorite Netflix documentary or the mainstream media outlets you use to combat alt-right weirdos and QAnon freakazoids all the time. You should see these articles pop up, and yet, what do? Overlook them, just scan past them, I don't care, unless it involves Trump. What is it exactly that prevents you from realizing that Epstein is the epitome of just about everything, the tinfoil hat conspiracy type that you've been fighting all this time? Is everything, he's everything we claim to exist. I mean, he's with the most powerful people in the world that make policy decisions. Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission, my fly swatter just fell. Or are you just going to stop with the basic stuff about he's hanging with Trump and doing something to little girls? And that's good enough for me because, hashtag me too and stuff. That's the thing to say, right? Very interesting. And I think I covered everything, so let me drop into the comments. Thank you for everyone that's hanging out. Thank you to all the new followers. I meant to say that originally, actually. Thank you, Patty, for the 10 lemons. I like me some lemons. That's really beneficial. Got ice cream there. Boner says, anyone here from the former Canadian Embassy bodyguard that was arrested had ties to nonprofit for children? No. I haven't heard of that, actually, man. That's a good lead. I might look into that. What's going on, Gary? 2 scoops of ice cream story. Yeah, man, the fucking classic story. Yeah, 14 feds in the Whitmer napping. Yeah, so going back, I should have clarified. I meant to bring that up earlier, Gary, but thank you for commenting that. So what Gary said on DLive is, and what I'd read was that 14 federal informants or agents were involved in the Whitmer kidnapping. And yes, that's exactly the number that's coming out in the mainstream now, is anywhere between 12 to 14 people from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, were involved in that attempt. So this isn't just, this isn't just fucking just one informant, right? There's a lot of them making sure that there's a few people that want to end up, kidnapping the governor, right? And we gotta feed that narrative that the QAnon right-leaning Trump was cheated out of the elections. That crowd, the insurrection crowd, is all taken care of. In order to do that, let's, falsely portray them as be willing to kidnap a governor. And again, I'm not saying that, I bet you there's people out there willing to do that. But the question is, would it ever get to that point if the FBI didn't fucking get themselves involved and egg them on to begin with? That's the question. That's the question. All right? So I don't agree with violence. I know in some cases it happens. I'm not ever promoting violence on here, whatever. I'm just saying that there's going to be people out there with extremist ideas. And some of those people will actually do shit, which is a very few. And most of them will just leave it as a mental thought process, exercise. They'll leave it to their text messages. They'll leave it to their Discord channels. They'll leave it to their Telegram chats. Until, of course, an FBI agent maybe infiltrates those groups and eggs them on a little bit, makes him feel good about himself. This is it. This is the moment. This is the moment, guys. This is the moment we've been waiting for. You said it yourself. You hate X, Y, and Z, right? You stand against X, Y, and Z belief system. This is your moment. I mean, taking advantage of people that are either mentally retarded. By definition, I know they don't use the R word anymore, but by definition, literally, retarded people that don't know any better and clearly would not be able to build a fucking plastic explosive. Like, you guys get what I'm saying? Gerbs. Goebbels says, I agree with violence. We know. We know. No. You know what it is? Is like, seriously, I do believe at this point, something drastic does have to happen. I'm not saying how it's supposed to go down or whatever. Hate to see people, doesn't matter who they are, hurting, but Jesus Christ, man, we're so far gone. Like, this is the type of shit that's going on. Epstein is the type of people we're up against. Like, people that are members of the FBI, the CIA, other organizations, they're blowing up federal buildings. They're burning people like the Branch Davidians alive. They're sniping women with babies in their hands on mountaintops like Ruby Ridge. They're walking into gay nightclubs and shooting them up while the FBI informant is, the father of the person that is shooting them up, and it just goes on and on and on. And if it's not that, we can look at history, and we can look at the fact that they used sexual blackmail in operations like Project Midnight Climax, where they set up the old brothel, CIA-backed and funded with one-way mirrors, and they recorded people having sex while also dosing them with acid to see if that does anything. They're all unconsenting. These are all criminal acts, technically. Drug trafficking to South America. Maybe we're funding a few death squads here and there. Some over in Europe, because, the World War II just ended, and the communists are still like a really big thing and stuff, and they're about to become a really big thing and stuff. So I got to do this Operation Gladio thing, but how do we get money for Operation Gladio since Congress doesn't really want to approve death squads? I got an idea. Black people. Let's seed heroin into black jazz communities in the late 1940s and 1950s. And when we're done selling drugs, we'll be able to give that money to death squads so they can cut people's heads off and stuff. But who cares because it's communists or whatever, and Congress doesn't need to know because I'm the CIA and stuff. Those are the type of people that Jeffrey Epstein might have been brushing shoulders with. So, the sooner you learn about this and become educated on it, the better you will be equipped to raise your child if you do not have one yet. All right, so this will be uploaded on BitChute after the fact. For those of you that are still on YouTube, please consider visiting DLive. That's dlive.tv/MemoryHold. It's better that way. It's censorship free. We can do what we want to do. YouTube is once again just interchangeable. I'm going to use it until I get banned, and if I do get banned, it will be 5.0, 6.0, MemoryHold 7.0. But right now, I'll put this entire video up there because it doesn't feature any sex shit and pedophile stuff. Aside from just the mention of Epstein. But for the most part, it will mostly be clips, like summarized clips. If you go to my YouTube channel right now, MemoryHold 4.0, I'll put this in the chat for DLive, folks. Please don't rely on this DLive, folks. I'm banking on you. We had about 40. We had a little over 40 at one point. I appreciate you, though, those that hung out with me over here. But I also appreciate those that are hanging on YouTube. We got 15 people over there. This is my YouTube link. I got nothing up there. But you'll see this video. Clip. Epstein on Pornhub. The only reason it's 20 minutes is because it's part of a 2-hour show. The rest of it containing nudity, Hunter Biden stuff, essential information that you need to know about, but you can't watch it on YouTube. You just can't. The only way you can get that information is if you visit my BitChute channel where it's safe. Look, Epstein and Hunter on Pornhub, 2 hours and 17 minutes. Almost 2.5 hours of content that you can watch, unless, of course, you just stick to YouTube. You want to only get 20 minutes, you want to get like watered down bullshit or whatever. So, it's up to you. The choice is yours. You know what I mean? Either way, I'll be doing this stuff. That's the format I'm going to be taking. BitChute and DLive are the primaries, YouTube's the secondary, everywhere else is, an additional benefit. Although, once again, I will reiterate the fact that Odyssey.com has the entire backup of my MemoryHold 2.0 and 3.0 channel, guys. So for those that want to familiarize themselves. Maybe there's a video that you watched of mine in the past that you really liked. Search MemoryHold on Odyssey. 57 videos on the 2.0 backup channel. See? This is exactly how it was if I didn't get banned, right? We got the Jean-Luc Brunel breakdown. We got how Charles Manson is connected to the CIA. We got the big Jeffrey Epstein exposés I filmed back in 2019. We got source code demons hidden in plain sight, the Finders Cult, ultimate breakdown, Nexium stuff, all sorts of shit. So Odyssey, BitChute, DLive, and then YouTube, guys. Stop supporting biblical demons, even if that doesn't mean you're spending money on them, but even if it's just your time. All right? So I appreciate everyone. Thank you for hanging out tonight. Check in on BitChute. This will be up in a little while. Thanks.